So, over the past few weeks, I've noticed an increased presence in YouTube in regards to Clippy. Clippy is a discontinued Microsoft Office mascot used in the early 2000s as a sort of assistant when documenting in certain Windows applications. It used about like Bayesian algorithms to answer any questions you had, which basically means it's not so much as an AI, more so it would work to give a response as close to a topic as possible using pre-prompted responses. I remember having used it at some point in my childhood, and even then I didn't, like, my underdeveloped brain back then found it insufferable and kind of useless. When just writing things, when all you had to do was just, write things up. That was the only task you wanted to do when opening up a document. I was never a fan of its corporate art style either to begin with, and honestly, I still don't like it. I'm sorry, I just don't like its art style. Anyway, the short and simple explanation to this presence is apparently Louis Rossman's video discussing company ethics, primarily their use of anti-ownership practices. This generally refers to actions or strategies basically employed by manufacturers or companies that aim to limit a consumer's ability to fully own, control, repair, or extend the lifespan of products that they purchase. A pretty good example of this is the streaming services like Netflix or software like Adobe, which are, very well known for, just charging up the ass for a lot of things in general, where you are no longer paying to own a product, but rather paying access to it. And the moment you cease to pay access to it, all of your access is suddenly dropped. Or in the case of, Twitch, for example, they'd be able to, get rid of your account for whatever they deem, appropriate to do so. Now, this is not a new subject in the slightest, as tech companies and software companies have been doing this for years at this point. With the rise of AI and the hypocrisy of feeding AI personal information while repackaging and selling that information to the public, and then restricting that information and calling it their own, has also been something I've seen people bring up constantly. And it's yet another reason why, I've heard people taking on this symbol as a call to attention to this age-old problem of privacy and personal information. This gained even more traction, however, after the Online Child Safety Act passed a bill. It was like a bill passed in the UK to ensure people are at an age to view certain content online that's not deemed, appropriate for kids. But many people, including myself online, believe this to be not just an overreach in online privacy, but just a weird compromise to, it's a compromise to freely access information as well, and also just a cheap trick to try and to protect kids in the name of kids. Usually, this approach is usually highly inefficient. The question of whether children to be protected doesn't need to be a question of what they have access over. You really want to protect them. There's plenty of work to be done in Roblox and places like YouTube in general, where high-profile channels are being involved with messaging and getting into relationships with like underage kids in general. They don't take those people down as quickly as enforcing these like new legislative laws. For some reason, there just seems to be a obvious disconnection there with the purpose. So the difference in approach here is that you're not restricting access to the general public, but rather you're targeting specific cases of people being involved in things that go against general public safety, and that would be working with the general public in general. But just to digress a little bit, that's not really what the video is about. The video is primarily about going back to Louis Rossman's initial purpose of this Clippy looking thing that we've been seeing online about. So let's just explore that for a second real quick. So I'm checking out Louis Rossman's video on the progress of the Clippy movement one weekend, and he kind of brought into attention this consumer rights wiki. So I'm gonna click on this and check this out real quick, see how it's like. And honestly, with full disclosure, I've been in this website before just to take a look at it and to judge it for how it was. And initially I was here to, kind of criticize it, give it a couple of feedback. And that's a bit of a mix of what I'm going to be doing. But I was mostly decently impressed, with the amount of information that's in this wiki already. I feel like there's more information on than I had visited last time, honestly. I was primarily impressed with the, since I tend to focus on the things that I own, like the Google Pixel. I'll be looking at that real quick first. And with the changes in in the wiki, some things might be recategorized, but I took a look at this before. The Google Pixel 4a, for example, you're looking here. I have both the Pixel 4a and the 9a. The reason I switched over from the Pixel 4a to the for the 9a was because they've been telling me like your battery's been people have been telling me like your battery's kind of dying off a little bit more than usual. And this was a little strange, having considered that I bought this back in like 2020. This was not even 2020 is like 5 years ago. That's like nothing in compare. Like this technology could have lasted me a lot longer. But the fact that this kind of documents and brings into light my suspicions, I feel very justified in in having suspected Google of all companies, I guess, to really do this, even though fell into their trap, right into their trap. Basically, Google Pixel's 4A's, a battery performance program. So basically what happened is Google Pixel 4A, it just basically, created a software update to improve the stability of their battery's performance. This was basically rolled out in January 8th, 2025. For some devices, the software update started reducing the available battery capacity and impacted the charging performance of these impacted devices. Basically, this is a pretty good example of like planned obsolescence, where your device a product begins to diminish seemingly for no reason at all. So it's a company created this sort of like planned obsolescence, whereas you just leave it alone and it would have worked just perfectly, basically. They've also done this with light bulbs. If you look up Edison's origins, that's a really fun rabbit hole to get behind. But generally, I want to stick to this topic generally. So Google has asked users to provide the IMEI number for the Pixel 4a to determine whether that device is an impacted device. If the user device is an impacted device, they may choose one of the following: free battery replacement, $100 towards another Pixel. Would have been helpful if I'd known that before, or $50 or local equivalent. So I'm just gonna click on this little thing here. I think that was that 2, or was that oh shit. But anyway, here's a bit more information. Restoring battery functionality. I could probably get like a battery replacement. So there's criticisms here. The update is automatic. Users cannot opt out of. That's really really frustrating. Google's communication on what the problem with impacted devices and how the update is vague. Google has been giving a lot of misleading or incorrect information. Google support initially stated that a $100 coupon code could not be used in the combination with other sales. This turned out to be false. A lot of stuff, a lot of very useful information here, but I think what I'm going to do now, I think, is probably apply for this. Let's see. Summary of program. I think I'm just going to apply to I think it's the first one here. First citation, second citation, impacted device. There you go. And request a payment. I'm gonna fill out this information for my Pixel 4a battery performance program thing to basically get myself some money back. Okay, so I submitted the application after just looking through my Pixel 4a. Keep in mind that if you're gonna do this same thing and owning a Pixel 4a, you might not be eligible for any compensation for for different reasons, for whatever reasons. But overall, I think that was like a very useful thing to know, and it's all thanks to this consumer products page. I give a lot of it's like a lot of praise for that. Basically, my only one critique here would be, maybe this is just the nature of like the weight of how many products are kind of filled with these sorts of things is, or maybe it's just the organization. I don't know. The website itself, have to kind of like click through a bunch, like a forest of a bunch of like links to get to the things that you're looking for. But I think maybe that comes with the nature of just trying to track everything as much as possible. My other, maybe less of a critique and more an observation, that some of these pages are well, I don't blame it as being as incomplete. It looks like there's a lot more work to be done, as Lewis had stated. But some of these things, like let's say fan noise, being a thin and light laptop, it suffers from a fan noise. This also leads to fan kicking in when you're watching a video or doing stuff that are not resource intensive. So okay, so this feels more of a critique than like bringing into light the shady things that companies are kind of doing in the back end, kind of like what we just observed with the Pixel 4a. So I would maybe urge whoever's listening to, or whoever's actively working on editing these pages, to kind of stick to maybe that sort of a more resource intensive thing or actionable kind of things for these products, instead of maybe just simply critiques. Otherwise, I'm looking at this website a little bit more, and I'm liking what I've been seeing so far. I hope the primary goal of this initial cause isn't lost to the ocean of information. I think that, like most things, if enough people hold a thought to a certain outcome, that thought will make its way across reality in ways that we may have never predicted initially. So that's it for today. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Oh, and also I have a Clippy vector file. It's on my X account in the description below. I think it's a better redesign, in my honest opinion. I'm working on a video on how to publish on the Google Play Store, so you can keep an eye on that too. Thanks.